In case number 2016-00228, Duke Energy, Inc.'s application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity, authorizing the construction of an advanced metering infrastructure, request for accounting treatment, and all other necessary waivers, approvals, and relief. My name is Michael Schmidt. I'm chairman of the Public Service Commission. Seated to my right is Robert Cicero, who is the vice chairman, and to my left, Commissioner Dan Logston. If anyone has a cell phone, please turn it off or turn the sound down so that it won't interfere with the hearing. I will tell you that we're having some technical difficulties with the recording equipment. In the event you see Ms. Hughes waving or something, it means that the equipment isn't recording, at which time we may, of necessity, have to stop for a few minutes to see if we can't get it repaired. At this time, if we're ready to move forward, would counsel for the parties please identify themselves and their representatives, if any, who are present in the hearing room. Mr. DeCenzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Rocco D'Ascenzo, Associate General Counsel for Duke Energy Kentucky. Business address is 139 East 4th Street, Cincinnati, Ohio. With me today is James Henning, President of Duke Energy Kentucky, Peggy Laub, Don Schneider, Dr. Sasha Weintraub, and did I miss anyone? I think those are our witnesses. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. For the Office of the Attorney General.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the Attorney General, I'm Lawrence Cook, and this is my co-counsel, Mr. Kent Chandler.
And for the PSC staff.
Thank you, Your Honor. Behalf of PSC staff, Quan Nguyen.
Thank you. I've already checked the record, and the notice of hearing has been filed in the record, so we're ready to proceed. I note there are also, I guess, one, maybe two, confidentiality motions. They haven't been ruled on, but will be after the hearing. In the event, during the course of the testimony, counsel learns that or believes that confidential matters are about to be inquired into, please let me know so we can go on the confidential record so as to protect your position. Okay? Are there any other motions to be brought before the Commission at this time?
I don't believe so.
If not, the law provides that the public is entitled to come forward and provide the Commission with any comment any member of the public may have with respect to the subject matter of these proceedings. I don't think anyone is in the hearing room, but I will announce that if any member of the public is here, would like to come forward and advise the Commission of any position that person may take, please step forward to the microphone, provide your name and address, and any information you would like to give the Commission. There being no one here, we'll move forward to the next item. Are there any documents that counsel for any of the parties wish to file into evidence?
No, Your
Everything's probably already in the record, but there's nothing new? Or
That's correct.
That's right, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, we're ready for the presentation of evidence. Mr. D'Ascenzo, would you please call your first witness?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of Duke Energy Kentucky, we would call James Henning as our first witness.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Henning, do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may ask.
Thank you. Mr. Henning, could you please state your name, business address, and position with the company for the record, please?
My name is James Henning. I'm the president of Duke Energy Kentucky. My business address is 139 East 4th Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45202.
And Mr. Henning, did you cause to file direct testimony in this proceeding?
I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to that testimony?
I do not.
And do you hear, and I don't believe you had any data requests, is that correct?
I did not.
Okay. Your Honor,
That's correct.
the witness is available for cross-examination.
As I understand it, there's been a previous stipulation and recommendation entered into between Duke and its counsel and the Office of the Attorney General relative to a proposed settlement or understanding as to what the parties consider to be a fair resolution of this matter. Is that correct, Mr. Cook?
That is correct, Your Honor.
And I also note from having looked at the proposed agreement yesterday that the relative parties, including the Office of the Attorney General, has agreed to waive cross-examination of all witnesses,
Except in support of the
except
settlement.
in support of the proposed settlement. Is that correct?
Yes,
Do you
Your Honor.
have any cross-examination at this time?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
No questions, Your Honor.
No questions? Okay, you may step down.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot my cohorts here. Mr. Cicero, do you have any questions?
I do not.
I do not, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. For its next witness, Duke Energy Kentucky would call Dr. Sasha Weintraub.
Okay, Mr. Weintraub, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may ask.
Thank you, Dr. Weintraub. Would you please state your name, business address, and position with the company for the record?
Sure. My name is Alexander J. Weintraub. I'm also known as Sasha Weintraub. I work at 400 South Tryon in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Customer Solutions for Duke Energy.
Thank you, Dr. Weintraub. And did you cause to file direct testimony and responses to data requests in this proceeding?
I did.
And do you have any changes or corrections to either your testimony or the data requests?
I do not.
And with respect to the data requests, do you hereby adopt those answers as part of your testimony for this proceeding?
I do.
Thank you, Dr. Weintraub. Your Honor, the witness is
Any
available for
cross-examination?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Staff?
Staff knows question, Your Honor.
Mr. Cicero?
No questions.
No questions.
Okay, you may step down. Call your next witness.
All right. So for Duke Energy Kentucky's next witness, we would call Don Schneider.
Mr. Schneider, do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may ask.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Schneider, would you please state your name, business address, and position with the company for the record?
Donald Schneider, Jr., business address is 400 South Tryon Street in Charlotte, North Carolina. I am the Director of Advanced Metering for Duke Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. And did you cause to file direct testimony, rebuttal testimony, and responses to data requests in this proceeding?
Yes, I did.
And do you have any changes or corrections to either the testimony or those data requests?
I do not.
And with respect to the data requests, do you hereby adopt those responses as part of your testimony for this proceeding?
I do.
And if you were asked those same questions, then today your responses would be the same?
They would be.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Your Honor, the witness is available for cross.
Any cross-examination?
No questions, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Schneider.
Morning.
Can you refer to the application, page 16, paragraph 33?
Page 16.
Yes, sir. Paragraph 33 states that the company states that it proposes to finance the proposed AMI implementation through either continuing operations and debt instruments as necessary. Can you provide an estimate as to how much of the construction will be financed through either operations and/or financed through debt instruments?
I am probably not the expert to answer that question.
Okay. Do you know who would
I
be?
think witness Laub
Okay.
would be.
And can you now refer to Duke Kentucky's response to Commission staff's first data request, item 21?
Yes.
Okay, this the request is related to the number of cellular modem meters, and Duke Kentucky responded that the cost estimate for those meters is based upon 4.5% of the total meters requiring meters that contain their own cellular modem. Is that 4.5% of the total electric meters? Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And is this because some meter locations will be too remote or far outside of the neighborhood area network for it to send communications except through a wireless carrier?
That's correct. These are locations that are far enough out of the mesh that it is not cost-effective to extend via other communication devices to pick it up. Thereby, it's more cost-effective to install what we call a direct connect meter that has its own cell modem.
Okay, so it'd be too expensive to put like a range extender?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what happens if the location of that meter, of a meter with its own cellular modem, is so remote that cell phone service or wireless service is not available? What option does Duke Kentucky have to get the benefits of the AMI meter for that customer?
Yes, so there likely could be some of those cases. We do work with Verizon is our carrier, and let them know up front the locations we're installing. They do an assessment and provide us back information in areas that they do not have service. And as a result, we work with them to try to boost if there's another tower or something that they can install equipment to help boost the signal to get it. If not, there could be some cases where we would have customers that we cannot install any type of advanced meter.
So when you say there could be some customers, do you know, or does Duke Kentucky know, or have an estimate as to how many customers that would be too remote to have any
Yeah, I don't believe there
capabilities?
are any in the case for Kentucky.
I'm sorry?
I don't believe there are any for in this case for Kentucky,
Okay, so
based on the Verizon study analysis.
okay, so there's been some analysis conducted by Duke Kentucky to determine whether or not that would be a possibility.
That's correct.
Okay,
But examples in other jurisdictions is they'll come back and say, yeah, we have no issues in the areas, but sometimes one or two always pop up. So
okay. And then if that were the case, if there were some residences that would be too far remote, even for a wireless capable meter, having Verizon come in to install certain facilities in order to have that wireless connection, the cost of that would be borne by who?
by Verizon,
By Verizon?
yes.
Okay. So is Verizon the only wireless carrier in Duke Kentucky's service territory?
That's the only carrier that we plan to utilize.
Okay. Are there other wireless carrier in Duke Kentucky's territory?
Yes.
Okay. Who are those?
AT&T. I'm not sure who else besides those two.
Okay. So why did Duke Kentucky select Verizon as?
We use Verizon across the enterprise. They've got a strong network in all our jurisdictions, and so we have a rather large contract with Verizon.
Okay.
So anytime we do business with a cellular carrier, we always look to Verizon first.
Okay. And you mentioned that that this situation has occurred in other Duke jurisdiction?
Yes, they have.
Okay. And the solution to that is to have Verizon to come out and add additional facilities to improve the connectivity?
Yes, if they can, yes.
Okay. And with regards to the opt-out provision that's been agreed to in the stipulation settlement agreement in this case, Can you tell us about the opt-out provisions in other Duke Energy jurisdictions, specifically whether opt-outs are allowed and the costs to customers for doing so?
Yes, so we have filed opt-out tariff in 2 other jurisdictions, Duke Energy Ohio and Duke Energy Carolinas in the state of South Carolina. Duke Energy Ohio is a $30 monthly charge with a $100 one-time fee. And in Duke Energy Carolina, South Carolina, it is I believe it's around $12 monthly fee with a $150 one-time fee. And we currently have a tariff filed but not yet approved for Duke Energy Carolinas, North Carolina.
And what would be the proposed monthly and the one-time fee for North Carolina?
I believe they're very similar to South Carolina.
Okay, so $12 a month and $150 one-time fee.
Subject to check, yes, I
Okay.
believe that's the case.
And if you know whether the one-time fee, the $100 one-time fee for Ohio, the $150 one-time fee for South Carolina, and the potential $100 proposed one-time fee for North Carolina, are those reflective of the true cost estimate for the cost of opting out for that particular customer?
In each of those cases, I believe it is a settled upon amount,
Okay.
meaning that the actual costs are greater than that amount.
Okay. So do you know how much the actual cost would be in Ohio?
I don't have that figure, no.
You wouldn't have that for South Carolina or North Carolina either?
I do not, no.
Okay. Could I request you provide that as a post-hearing data request?
Certainly.
Okay. And then, so the differential in those costs in Ohio, who bears the burden of recovering the differential for the $100 that's charged and the actual cost?
That would be spread across all customers.
Okay. Same for South Carolina?
That's correct.
Okay. And then it would be the same for North Carolina if approved?
That's correct.
Okay. Sticking with the opt-out provision, and it's only for residential customers that are allowed to opt out of the meter implementation?
I believe we said residential and commercial, if I remember right.
Okay.
I have to look back at the stipulation.
I believe at page 6 it says residential.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, then it is just residential.
I believe so.
So yeah, on page 6 of the stipulation, paragraph 5, customer opt-out program, says the parties agree that Duke Energy Kentucky shall implement an electric AMI opt-out program tariff for residential customers to be effective at the time of initial AMI deployment. And then if you look at the proposed rider for the advanced meter opt-out, it has residential.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Do you know why it's just limited to residential and not to commercial customers as well?
Typically, it's always residential that refuse or don't wish to have an AMI meter. We've never had any issues with commercial customers.
Okay. And so the monthly fee for the opt-out program that's being proposed here, and it's touched upon in Ms. Lobb's testimony in support of the settlement agreement, but if you know the answer, please respond. The incremental fee of the $25 per month is on a per customer premise basis. So does that mean that if the premise has 2 meters, it's still a $25 monthly fee?
I believe, and I apologize, I don't know the exact answer, but I believe it would be on a per meter basis.
On a per meter basis? Okay. And so would it be more appropriate to ask this of you, or would it be more appropriate to defer the question to Ms. Lobb? I'm going to refer you to Ms. Lobb's settlement testimony.
Okay.
And on page 8, lines 14 and 15,
I don't have a copy of her settlement testimony.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
What page again was that?
page 8,
And line number?
line 14 and 15.
Good.
So it says, the sentence says, the monthly incremental fee will be $25 per customer premises. So to clarify now, it's on a per meter basis?
Yeah, I said I believe it was, but this states otherwise. So
Okay,
it
so
does
should
appear-
is Ms. Lobb the more appropriate witness to direct the question to?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
you would be.
And then, would you have any knowledge as to the impact of the opt-out program on potential benefits could be accrued through the implementation of the AMI system, the new AMI system?
Yes, we don't anticipate much, if any. The rate of refusals in our other jurisdictions has been less than 0.1%, and that number even drops once the opt-out tariff is approved and effective. Once they know it's going to hit their bill, that less than 0.1% drops off about half of that again. So, if it shows true in Kentucky what we've seen in other jurisdictions, we don't think would be big enough to have any impact in the benefits as shown.
Okay. So the impact is driven by the fact that you don't expect, or Duke Kentucky doesn't expect to have that many customers who will sign up for opting out.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Can you refer now to Duke Kentucky's response to SAF's second data request? And it would be item 1B2. And then also, please refer to your DLS 4 exhibit to your testimony.
Your Honor.
Yes.
Just to remind the commission that DLS4 is considered confidential, so depending on where the questioning goes.
Yeah, I'll couch it in such a way that perhaps you won't be able to touch into any of the confidential material, so.
And if you feel that it is, just let me know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So are you there?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. There's several calculations discussed in response to staff's second request, item 1B2, related to the total amount of annual costs associated with electric meter failures that appear on row 18, page 2 of 13 of Exhibit DLS 4. Okay. So, as a post-hearing data request, can you provide the calculations discussed here that support that total amount?
Yes, so these electric meter failure costs are associated with the failure rate of the new meters.
Okay. And knowing that is the failure rate of the new meters, you still provide the calculations to support
Yes, I do.
those calculations, okay. And then with respect to the remaining useful life of the electric meters that Duke Kentucky is proposing to retire, can you tell us what the remaining useful life of those meters are?
I believe they're currently on a 28-year depreciation.
Okay. Is the 28-year depreciation, is that the remaining depreciable lives, or is that the depreciation when it was first installed?
Depreciation when it was first installed.
Okay.
The meters are in a mass account, and I know Witness Loud can speak better to this probably,
Okay.
but they're in a mass account, so, anytime you install a new meter or retire a meter, that number constantly changes.
Okay. So would Ms. Lobb know what the remaining useful life of the meters in that master meter account would be?
I would suspect so, yes.
Okay. And can you tell us the different type of meters currently being utilized by Duke Kentucky?
Yes, so on the electric
I'm
side.
sorry, give me 1 second.
Okay.
You want it for electric? Okay. Let's first start with the electric meters.
Okay. Yeah, on the electric side, we have a combination of digital, older analog that are walk-by read meters, as well as some that we installed in a 2007 pilot that are TWACS, kind of an advanced metering AMI technology that are remotely read.
Okay. So the digital/analog, those are, you have to have a meter reader come up and read those meters.
That's correct.
Okay. And then when you say plaques, is that the PLC?
That is the PLC, yes.
Okay. And those are the two-way communication capable meters that could be read remotely. Is that what you said?
They are one-way
One-way.
communications, yes.
Okay. Oh, okay. So you just drive by, pings it, and you get the
No,
signal.
they actually send their data over the power lines back to our head-end systems for those TWACS meters,
Okay. So those are just one-way communication meters.
one-way communication.
Okay.
Yes.
So are these all of the types of meters that are currently being used by Duke Kentucky for electric meters?
For some of our larger industrial commercial customers that are on time-of-use rates or any other rates that would require interval-type data, we have some sort of an advanced meter out there already for those customers.
Okay.
They're not the newest AMI technology, but they're an older version that allows us to collect usage data intervally for the rates to support the rate structure they're on.
Okay. So for the residential customers, there's only I call it the non-smart meter, and the Plax AMI one-way capable meter.
That's correct.
There's not any meters that are capable of two-way communications for certain residential customers now?
Yes, I'm sorry. There are 396 AMI, the same technology we're proposing in this case, that residential customers that have that technology. It is the direct connect meter that we spoke of earlier that has the cell modem, and
Okay.
we opted to install those in those locations as part of our load research efforts that we do in Kentucky, like we do in all our utilities. It's much cheaper to utilize that meter than the old load research meters that we typically use. And since we already had the head-in system up and running, as well as the meter data management system up and running for all our other utilities, it was a lot less expensive to go ahead and install an AMI direct connect meter in those cases for those load research residential customers.
Okay. So those meters that have the modem installed in it, those are capable of transmitting data two ways?
Yes, two-way, yes.
So just to clarify, for the residential customers in Duke Kentucky service territory, Duke Kentucky has either the digital/analog non-smart meters, the Plax PLC AMI one-way communication meters, and then there are 396 AMI cellular modem capable meters that could transmit communications two-way.
That's correct.
Okay. And then for the large commercial/industrial customers, there's advanced AMI meters for those customers as well.
That's correct.
Okay. And then for the gas side?
The gas side, we have a combination of AMR technology that is a drive-by technology that serves about half of our customers that are gas-only customers, meaning we do not serve electricity in that territory. And then we also have about 13,000, you would call them AMI modules that are knitted and paired with the TWAX meters for the combination customers that have the TWAX electric meter. So a total of about 25,000
Okay.
between the gas only and the TWAX.
Okay. So for the gas, you got 12,000 AMR meters and then 13,000 AMI module in the gas meters.
That's correct.
Okay. So in terms of keeping the meter records by type or category meter, you mentioned that Duke Kentucky only has a master meter account. So all of these types of meter the data go into that master account.
That's right.
Okay.
Separate for gas and separate for electric.
Okay. But not separated by the type of meters.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Okay. So can you now refer to Duke Kentucky's response to Commission staff's first data request, item number 9? Are you there?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. In these responses, if Duke Kentucky does not keep meter records by type of meter, but only by master meter account, how does, or how was Duke Kentucky able to determine the information that was provided in response to staff's first request in terms of the $9 million net book value of the pilot meter, the net book value of the pilot meter as of the date of the response being $2,341,868.
I'm sorry, are you on set 2?
I'm sorry?
Set 2, number 9? Staff request?
No, 1, the first data request.
First set.
First set, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, could you restate the question? I'm sorry.
Sure. So the response to the data request is in response to staff's question of a breakdown of the $9.7 million that is reflects the undepreciated book value of the electromechanical meters and the AMI meters that Duke is proposing to retire. And the breakdown that's been provided by Duke Kentucky in response to, in the response 9A, as far as the $9 million of the undepreciated between the electromechanical meters and the automated metering equipment installed as part of the pilot program, that breakdown was $2.341 million for the pilot meters and $6.6 million for the electromechanical meters. So the question is, if Duke Kentucky has only one master meter account, how was Duke Kentucky able to provide this sort of granularity and of data for the undepreciated book value for the two types of meters?
I can't answer that question.
Okay.
Witness Loud would have to
Okay.
answer that question.
So now, if you can refer to Duke Kentucky's response to Commissioner Staff's second data request, items 2 and 8.
Second set, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Number 2?
Items 2 and 8.
Okay.
You there?
Yes.
Okay. So the response to item 2 states that since 2015, Duke Kentucky has been installing AMI meters, quote, as normal course of business technology change outs for a limited number of customers, including the 396 residential customers, close quote. And then the response to item 8 states that, quote, the company needs to continue its current practices around replacement of traditional electric meters until approved of this CPCN, until approval of the CPCN is obtained, close quote. So can you define what traditional electric meters mean? Is that the analog slash
Traditional would be yes.
digital meters?
Yes.
Okay. And then can you clarify whether AMI meters or the traditional meters are currently being installed for residential customers?
Your question is, are they currently being
Yes.
installed?
Yes.
So on, we talked about the 396 residential for load research, but also on some of the large commercial and industrial.
Oh, we're just sticking to residential customers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, none in the residential other than the load research.
Okay. So will the load research just be limited to the 396, or is that going to be expanded?
That will not be expanded.
That would not be expanded. Okay. So if a new customer or a customer that needs a replacement meter now, the meter will be a analog slash digital non-smart meter.
That is correct.
Okay. And just for clarification, again, if you know, for the 396 AMI meters, and for that 396 AMI meters, were they recorded separately from the other electric meters on Duke Kentucky's books, or were they recorded in the same master meter account?
I do not know that answer.
Ms. Laub would know.
Ms. Laub would be the
Okay.
expert.
Can you, hate to go back and forth, but refer back to the application? Page 11, paragraph 21.
Paragraph 21.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
So the paragraph states that the manufacturer of the traditional electromechanical meters currently in service is being discontinued. Do you know if Duke Kentucky is still able to purchase these meters?
Yes, so the traditional electrical mechanical meters are no longer being manufactured. Digital meters are.
Okay. So digital meters that would require still a meter read from a Duke Kentucky employee.
A walk-by read.
A walk-by,
yes.
okay. And so the electromechanical meters are no longer being manufactured.
That's correct.
Okay. Does Duke Kentucky have any electromechanical meters still in inventory?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I don't believe so.
Okay. So any new meters currently, well, are there any digital meters
Yes, there would be digital
in inventory?
walk-by meters in
Okay.
inventory.
Yeah, I thought he did. So, if you know, at the beginning when we talked about the types of meters that Duke Kentucky currently has in its electric territory, and you mentioned one of those type of meters were analog/digital meters. Do you know the breakdown of the numbers for the analog and the numbers for digital?
I do not.
You don't. So as a post-hearing data request, could you provide, or could Duke Kentucky provide a breakdown of the number of meters currently that are analog, electromechanical, and the number of meters that are digital?
Assuming that we track them that way,
Okay.
yes, we could.
Okay. And there's no, or if you know, there's no intent by any of the meter manufacturers to discontinue manufacturing the digital meters?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Is that because the digital meters could be upgraded to be capable of communicating bidirectionally, two ways?
I'm not aware of any meter manufacturer that upgrades digital meters to a AMI two-way communication.
Okay. Okay, so that's not, that function does not exist at all?
No.
Okay. Can you refer now to Duke Kentucky's response to Commission staff's second set of data request, item 3? Let me know if you're there.
Yes, I'm there.
Okay. The response states that Duke Energy Kentucky will utilize employees for transformer-rated and polyphaser metering installation, and will conduct a competitive bid process to obtain electric meter installation vendor pricing. So can you confirm that Duke Kentucky proposes to outsource the single-phase meter installations via a competitive bid process?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. And what's the rationale for using an external vendor for the installation of the single-phase meters as compared to in-house installation of the multi-phase and transformer-rated meters?
So we have current employee resources staffed to handle any work that's involved with the transformer-rated meters. But as far as the other meters that are not transformer-rated, the mass market meters, we don't have a staff. We would have to staff up for it.
Okay.
And it just doesn't make sense to staff up for a temporary project like this. So we always outsource any kind of work like this that is temporary in nature.
Staying on staff's second set of data information requests, item 4A. And can you also refer to Duke Kentucky's response to Commission staff's first set of data requests, 11C, as well?
11C?
Yes, first data request, item 11C.
Okay.
Okay, so the response to the staff's second request, item 4A, relates to the hard-to-read mobile/handheld mode, and the response to staff's first request, item 11C, indicates that the typical programming for the gas AMR module will be the mobile/handheld mode, but that the hard-to-read/handheld mode may be used depending upon the location. Can you tell us the estimated number of gas modules that will require the hard-to-read/handheld mode?
We don't have an estimate of that number, and won't know until we design the architecture, the telecommunications architecture, and at that point would determine, if we do have areas where we could potentially have to operate in that mode. Some of the potential locations would be inside meters that are down in basements that may be difficult to get the signal out.
Okay.
Would be examples, or very rural areas would be another example.
Okay. It says there right now, Duke Kentucky only has sort of a rough estimate as how many of those
We
gas
do not.
modules will be needed?
We do not.
You don't? Okay. Okay. Okay, staying on Duke Kentucky's response to staff's second data request, item 6. Let me know when you're there.
Yes, I'm there.
The response states that the manufacturer did not provide the estimated useful life of the electric AMI meters Duke Kentucky is proposing to install. Was that the basis of that response based upon the spec sheet that was provided?
That's correct.
Okay. Does Duke Kentucky have any other avenues in which to obtain that information?
Just discussions with the manufacturer themselves.
Okay. So, as a post-hearing data request, could Duke Kentucky contact the manufacturer and request that information?
Yes, we can.
Okay. And the meters that are being proposed, the electric AMI meters that are being proposed for Duke Kentucky, are the same type of meters that are already been implemented in Duke Energy Indiana and Duke Energy Ohio. Is that correct?
That's correct, as
Okay.
well as Duke Energy Carolinas.
Okay, both South Carolina and North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know what the useful life for those meters that are installed in those jurisdictions are?
As stated by the manufacturer, no, I don't.
Okay. What do you mean by as stated by the manufacturer?
I mean, if that's your question, do I know what the 30-year, or what the life expectancy is, as stated by the manufacturer? No, I don't.
Okay. Other than as stated by the manufacturer, were there any information that was provided to either Duke Energy Indiana, Duke Energy Ohio, or the Duke Carolinas as to the useful life of those meters that were implemented in those jurisdictions?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. So were you involved in any of the filings in those jurisdictions?
Yes, I was.
So there were no, as part of the record in those jurisdictions, there were no mention of the useful lives of the electric AMI meters proposed in those states?
There were not, to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Were they asked?
Not in any of the proceedings that I was involved in, no.
Okay. Did Duke Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, or the Carolinas request a depreciation rate for those meters?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And what was the request for the depreciation
request
rate?
was in Duke Energy Ohio. We requested in Duke Energy Indiana, as well as Duke Energy Carolinas, South Carolina.
What was the actual rate that was proposed? The depreciation rate?
15 years
15 years?
yes, for the electric.
And those were approved by those regulatory commissions?
Yes.
Okay. Can you refer now to Duke Kentucky's response to the Attorney General's second set of data requests, item 7?
Okay.
Okay. The response states that Duke Kentucky will commit to implementing the predictive usage estimator and alert program during the AMI rollout. Can you explain a little bit more in detail what this program is and whether a customer could choose to enroll, or would customers be automatically enrolled in such a program?
I'm sorry, I must not be on the same number. What number? Second set, AG,
Number 7.
number 7?
So on page 2 of 2.
Okay. Then, I'm sorry, can you restate the question?
Sure. At the end of that response, it stated that Duke Kentucky will commit to implementing, the predictive usage estimator and alert program during the AMI rollout. So can you provide a little bit more detail as to what the predictive usage estimator and alert program is?
Yeah, so it's around usage. So by having an AMI meter that has interval data, we have a much better picture of their usage and can predict where their usage would be by month end. And so these programs are related around alerting the customer around the amount of usage that they have, so they can sign up to say, I want to know what my usage is midway through my bill, for example, and they could be given alerts if they're going to pass that amount,
Okay.
and as well as predictive measurements on what their year or month end or cycle end bill would be.
Okay, okay. And this would this be a voluntary program?
Yes, it would be.
Okay. And how would the customer be sent like an email message or text message? How would that be? How
Whatever
would the
their
alert be
preference
made?
would be, whether it's text or email or whatever.
Okay, so they could elect to choose what mode of communication to use?
That's correct.
Okay. And do any of the other Duke Energy affiliates have that sort of offering in the other jurisdictions?
That question would probably be more for Dr. Weintraub,
Okay.
but to my knowledge, the programs are currently in development
Okay.
and will be available, I believe, sometime next year.
Okay. So can you refer to your rebuttal testimony on page 13? So let me know when you're there.
Okay, I'm there.
At lines 16 through 18, you state that, quote, once the regulatory asset is authorized and the company's CPCN application approved, the regulatory asset value will be known, close quote. Given that depreciation will continue to be taken on the current meters until each is replaced, can you explain how the regulatory asset value will be known prior to the meter upgrade being fully implemented?
Yeah, so to my knowledge, I mean, we calculated what the value was at the time of this filing, and that was the $9.6 million,
Okay.
if that's your question.
Okay, so that will be the amount that will be requested as deferred, to be deferred.
Yes, that was the value at that time. That value changes.
So you said if the value changes, does that mean that that 9.6 will then change at some point in time, or will it stay the
Yes.
same?
It changes, and witness Loud can probably speak better to that than I can, but.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. With respect to the data sharing provision for research to governmental entities and academia that is provided for in the stipulation, will Duke Kentucky need to revise its customer privacy policy to accommodate the sharing of that data as described in the settlement?
I'm not an expert on our customer policy, so I can't affirmatively answer that question.
Okay. Do you know who would?
I believe the gentleman that provided a response.
Sorry, who?
I believe a gentleman that provided a response in one of the discoveries.
Okay.
Is it,
Well-
might be Mark Hollis.
Let me ask you this. If Duke Kentucky could provide that as a response to a post-hearing data request?
Yes.
So, given the agreement or the commitment by Duke Kentucky to share customer data for research to governmental entities and universities, whether there would be a need to modify Duke Kentucky's personal privacy policy, and then how will customers be notified of that?
If I could provide a little insight into that, certainly we can provide that as a response.
Sure.
But the commitment is to provide it with non-specific customer information
Sure.
in aggregate form.
Right.
So it should not involve any customer-specific information that would then require, individual approvals. So
Okay, so with that qualification, the response would suffice. Okay. So the cost-benefit analysis that was performed by Duke Kentucky in support of the application, did that analysis include any benefits of being able to remotely disconnect or reconnect customers?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Would that fall under the operational savings?
Correct.
Okay. I guess now would be a good time to go into confidential session. I do have just a few related to confidential information.
Okay, at this time, for the record, we'll now go off the public broadcast and into confidential session.
Those are all the questions I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
Commissioner Cicero, you may ask.
Looking at the service life of meters, you've decided that 15 years is the appropriate service life on these new meters,
Correct.
but with no basis from the manufacturer to indicate that it's 15 years?
That's correct.
So what determination or what basis is 15 years?
Yeah, so really the basis for the 15 years is, we're all aware of changing technologies that occur in this digital world. And so the thought is that, if you look at AMR, there's always, when it came out, there's always another technology that seems to follow that provides additional benefits, and through the course of a cost-benefit analysis can prove that it's worthwhile to upgrade to that new technology. So we believe that we'll see that cycle repeat itself beyond the AMI technology, that within 15 years, roughly, there will be another technology out there that, again, based on a cost-benefit analysis that could potentially be available that would be of benefit to Duke as well as our customers to upgrade at that time. That's why we're seeking a 15-year depreciation life for this AMI technology, knowing that it's likely to have a useful life much longer than that.
What's the current, you had mentioned 28 years, what is what you're currently using?
That's the depreciation life, yes.
That's what's left in the depreciation, and that's the average life that's left in that. I know there's additions and subtractions that come out of that capital, the account for the meters, and you're saying that's
Again,
what
that's
it
the
is?
depreciation life. I don't know the actual, I mean, that's something that
That's okay.
Ms. Loud might be able to
So
answer.
would you say that Duke is being a little speculative in using the 15 years rather than a longer life based on the fact that they believe technology would change and therefore ratepayers will be paying at a greater rate than they would have had the depreciation life been extended out beyond the 15 years just because you believe technology is going to change?
Yes, it is. It is somewhat speculative, but I think you'll find that, other utilities in the state of Kentucky have been awarded that same 15-year depreciation for AMI technologies as well.
So believing that the 15 years might be speculative to start with, and giving it a basis that it's being utilized by other utilities, and then looking at the gas meter side where you've utilized 9 years, what would you say the reasonable basis for that is?
For the 9 years? Yeah, so that is really tied to the commission regulation around testing of gas meters on a 10-year cycle. So over a 10-year process, every meter gets removed and brought into the lab. And so if we stick to that cycle, then we shouldn't be replacing modules in between the 10-year cycle that we change out the meters. If we go with a longer life cycle or depreciation period, then we could be out there changing these modules out due to failed batteries and making extra trips to the field to do that prior to it coming back up to its 10-year cycle to replace the gas meter.
Doesn't the manufacturer indicate that the battery life, even with the two-way communication, is somewhere to 17 to 18 years?
13 to 20, if I recall right in the spec sheets. Again, depending on what mode of operation, as we discussed earlier.
What happens to the meters, even on a cycle of a 10-year inspection? Do you intend on disposing of those meters?
Yes, we do. We do that today. It's not cost effective as you bring those in to spend time testing and refurbishing. It's cheaper just to recycle them, excuse me, and install the new meter.
So by recycling, do you mean that they're refurbished or just totally landfilled? Scrapped.
Yep.
So your only value out of them is to sell them for scrap.
That's right.
I'm not sure certain of the 9 years, but there may be.
And we're certainly open, if we could get a waiver or a change in the rule to increase to a 15-year gas meter inspection replacement program to align with a more expected life of the module. We would certainly be open
You'd
to
be
that.
open to that?
Yes.
So we kind of got back to where I wanted to be without me asking the additional questions, but for my edification, where all in Duke's service territory are these meters currently installed?
Yeah, I think there's a map provided in in the application that shows the locations, but it's the,
Indiana, Ohio, South Carolina, North Carolina?
oh, I'm sorry, I thought you meant in Kentucky.
No, I'm at your
These gas modules,
overall, the total system.
so only in Duke Energy, Ohio do we also serve gas.
So you're only utilizing, yeah, but I mean, looking at the electric meters as well.
Oh.
I'm not just referring to gas right now. So in terms of this change out that Duke is undergoing throughout their system, or NiSource if we want to go to that level, where all are these meters being installed throughout the entire system?
Duke Energy Ohio is completed. Duke Energy Indiana is started. Duke Energy South Carolina is in process. Duke Energy North Carolina is in process. Those are the areas today that we serve.
So once Kentucky, if it's approved, what percentage of the total system will that represent that are with these new meters?
I believe
100% of the system?
around 94%, 95%.
94 or 95%. So are these meters being changed out just as a matter of making the meters uniform across the system?
That's a part of it. I mean, we've standardized on this Itron solution for AMI across the enterprise. And so from an enterprise perspective, yes, we are standardizing the solution.
So looking at the 9.6 million or whatever the balance is in that current meter account of the undepreciated amount that will now be basically, depending on who you speak to, double dipped because the ratepayers are already have that in their base, and now we're talking about these new meters being put in there. There's not enough of a benefit looking at meters currently in the inventory that you have that says you could continue along that cycle, or Duke believes that the benefits that are being identified overwhelm everything else, and it's therefore uniformity and consistency is worthwhile.
Yeah, so the latter in that case, and so the benefits as stated in our cost-benefit analysis, as well as the technology enabling products and services and other things as referenced in Dr. Weintraub's testimony. We really feel like the overall value, beyond the cost-benefit analysis, the overall value is there to make the upgrade.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Commissioner Logston?
I just wanted to follow up. You said less than 1% has been Duke's experience as far as opt-outs.
0.1%.
0.1%. That's what I was. Okay. I just wanted to clear that up, Mr. Chairman. That's it.
Mr. DiCenso, any questions?
Yes, I do have a few. Mr. Schneider, do you recall a couple of questions from Commission staff regarding the company's opt-out tariff?
Yes.
And do you recall specific questions about how the dollars compared, the dollars in the proposed tariff here in Kentucky compared to those in other jurisdictions?
Yes.
And I believe you had listed those costs in the other jurisdictions, and we have a post-hearing data request around those as well. Mr. Schneider, are you familiar with the Commission's Smart Grid administrative case, case number 2012-428?
Yes.
And were you involved in that case on behalf of Duke Energy?
I was involved in some of the initial testimony, yes.
And are you familiar with the Commission's order that came out in April of this year in that case?
Yes.
And do you know whether the Commission in that order spoke to opt-out?
Yes, so there was a general dislike for an opt-out as far as offering an opt-out, but they did believe that if an opt-out was offered, it should be at the cost of the customers that are opting out.
And when the opt-out tariff was under negotiation, were you involved in those negotiations?
Yes.
And were the rates that were settled upon, were they developed with the Commission's order in that Smart Grid administrative case in mind?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you remember some conversation about the charge, the ongoing charge of the opt-out of $25 and whether it was per meter or per premises?
Yes.
Do you know whether Duke Energy Kentucky allows its customers to have consolidated billing if they have multiple premises on one account?
To my knowledge, yes, that is the case.
And so if on a single bill, a customer would have multiple addresses on one bill, then would they receive separate charges for the opt-out for each of those premises?
For separate premises, yes, that would be the case. But
Okay.
I think what we realized is that multiple meters on the same premise would just be a single monthly charge.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
Mr. Schneider, do you recall some questions regarding our outsourcing of the deployment of these meters?
Yes,
And I believe you had indicated that because this would be a temporary endeavor, that's the reason why we would outsource the deployment.
correct.
Could you please just explain that a little more, what you meant by temporary?
Well, temporary in that this is a 2-year program. When we're finished, there'll be no more work to do for that resource. And so it just does not make sense to hire on employees, staff up to, deploy a temporary project such as this and then have to deal with displacement of those employees at the end of the project.
Thank you. Do you recall some questions by the Vice Chairman about the useful life versus depreciable life of the electric meters?
Yes.
Do you recall what the depreciable life that has been approved in the other Duke Energy jurisdictions where we're deploying AMI?
15 years for the electric meters.
And would you say that that's, in your opinion, pretty standard?
Yes, from what I've seen, again, with other utilities in Kentucky as well, that seems to be the standard.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any questions?
Did have one question, point of clarification. Do you remember earlier staff asking about AG 2-7, where the reference was to a predictive usage estimator?
Yes.
Is that the same thing that is referenced in the stipulation at number 8 on the top of page 13, the monthly usage alert program?
Yes, that would be the same thing. Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Staff?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple of additional questions since we got into the gas module, depreciation life for the gas module as well. Do you recall in Duke Kentucky responses to some of staff's data requests that the average service life of those gas modules varies between 13 and 20 years, but that the battery life is between 18, could be between 18 and 20 years if one scheduled transmission occurs per day, or between 15 and 17 years if there were 2 scheduled transmissions occurring during the day. Do you recall those information?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So, does Duke Kentucky have any expectation as to how many transmissions per day a gas module would submit?
It would, excuse me, it would be once a day.
On average, just once a day?
On average, yeah. But there's other things in the specs that talk about what mode you operate that impacts that battery life as well. And the other piece is the amount of firmware or program upgrades that you might send to that device over time.
Okay.
Also adds to the degradation of the battery as well.
Okay. So there's a number of factors that come into play in terms of the range of,
Correct.
The useful-
Not just the number of reads per day.
okay. Is there a difference in useful life between the AMR gas modules and the AMI gas modules?
I believe the specs pretty much state the same thing.
Okay. And has any of the other Duke Kentucky affiliates, well, it would just be Ohio, since Ohio is the only one that has gas, right? You just mentioned that.
Correct.
Has, as part of that proceeding, I guess, in Ohio, what was the useful life that was approved for the gas module?
I'm sorry, but I do not recall. Witness Laub may be able to recall that.
I'm sorry, who would recall that?
Witness Laub may be
Okay.
able to recall that. I can't.
And then, as part of a post-hearing data request, could Duke Kentucky provide the effect it would have on annual expense if the gas modules were depreciated over a 15-year and an 18-year life as compared to a 9-year life?
Yes, we should be able to provide that.
Thank you. And then, touching back on a couple of questions that you were asked by Mr. D'Ascenzo, with respect to the administrative case 2012-428 on smart meter, smart grid implementation, with respect to an opt-out regime, did I recall you testifying that the cost for the opt-out should be borne by the customer electing to opt out? Is that what you said?
That's correct.
Okay. So, is it fair to say then that any costs should not be socialized with respect to that decision?
Ideally, yes.
Okay. When you say ideally,
Well, knowing that we've got, I believe, $143,000 in IT costs that we will be socializing.
okay. Beyond that,
Beyond that, correct.
the monthly fee or even the
Fees,
one-time fee.
One-time fees, yes.
Okay. And then with respect to the outsourcing of the single-phase meters versus the in-house use for the multi-phase meters and transformers, what's the nature of the multi-phase meters that would allow for a more efficient use of in-house, or would need more in-house staffing to do those type of?
I'm sorry, I missed part of that question. Could you restate?
Sure. So, single-phase meters are, this project is going to be outsourced to a third-party vendor. And the response to that was because Duke Kentucky did not have the in-house personnel to do that, and because this was a temporary 24-month project, that economically it wouldn't necessitate building up in-house to do it.
Mhm.
Versus Duke Kentucky already having an in-house staff to do the change-outs for multi-phase meters. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So what is it about the nature of the multi-phase meter that makes it more economical for Duke Kentucky to staff internally versus outsourcing that?
Yeah, so they're required to do annual tests, and I don't know the details, but on those larger meters, and so by changing them out, that suffices for the test as well. So really they're accomplishing two things while they're out there changing out the meter.
Okay, so it's a more redundant function that requires internal personnel to attend to?
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
Those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Cicero?
No other questions.
Commissioner Logston?
No.
Anything else?
One question, if I may. Mr. Schneider, do you recall staff just asking you a question about the useful life and depreciable life of the Ohio gas modules?
Yes.
Do you know offhand whether Ohio has the same 10-year testing requirement that Kentucky does?
They do not.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. At this time, let's take a 10-minute, 11-minute break until 11 o'clock. We'll be in recess until 11. We're back on the record. Mr. DeCenzo, please call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. For its next witness, Duke Energy would call Peggy Lobb.
Ms. Lobb, do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
You see. You may ask.
Thank you. Ms. Lobb, did you cause to file direct testimony, rebuttal testimony, and testimony in support of the stipulation, as well as responses to data requests in this proceeding?
I do.
Do you have any changes or corrections to any of those items?
I do not.
And if so, if you were asked those questions, then today would your responses be the same?
They would.
Thank you, Your Honor. The witness is available for cross.
No
Questions?
questions at this time.
Staff?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Lobb.
Good morning.
Mr. Schneider deferred a few questions to you, if you were here earlier. So the first one relates to the financing of the project, either through operations or through debt instruments. Do you know or could provide an estimate as to how much of the financing will be through operations and how much will be provided through debt instruments?
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, as of today, we're just going to finance it through continuing operations.
Okay. And then, with respect to the accounting for the different types of meters within Duke, Kentucky's territory, Mr. Schneider mentioned that it gets recorded in a master meter account. Is that correct?
Yeah, so our plan accounting records, our ledger, there's one account for Kentucky for all types of meters. Now, there are some characteristics of meters that are in the details of that plant. And specifically for the TWACs or the pilot meters,
Okay.
there were specific projects that we were able to find so that we could isolate those costs.
Okay, so in terms of that 396 AMI meters, is that what you're mentioning, or the pilot program?
The pilot program
The pilot
with the dollar amount, I
Okay.
think, in the specified in the one data request.
Okay, okay. So with respect to the 396 meters that are for the load research, are those separately accounted for as well within the master meter account?
Those, I don't know, if they're a different type of meter, there's a possibility that they are separately identified.
Okay,
I would have to verify that.
okay. Could you verify and provide that in the form of a post-hearing data request?
Yes, we can.
Okay. With respect to the remaining useful life for the current meters, Mr. Schneider mentioned a 28-year depreciable life. Do you know what the remaining life?
I don't know what the remaining useful life is. The 28 years is the rate that was approved in our 2006 rate case, so it's
Okay.
like 10 years old, and we've had additions and retirements. I would think since the type of meters haven't varied that much, it would be still in that ballpark. But I'm not sure if that was, 28 years was a settled, or if that was the number that our depreciation consultant came up with.
Okay. Is there a way for you to verify that through a post-hearing data request with respect to what the remaining life would be?
For the remaining useful life, we would probably have to have our depreciation consultant look at that.
Okay. 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 Do you know that give me 1 second. Right. Okay, so the 396 meters that, for the load research, that are capable of being used with the proposed system, those meters are not going to be retired, is that correct?
If we were going to use them, they would not be retired, that's correct.
Okay.
So there will be some meters still left in the meter account. There's some, I believe, some types of commercial industrial meters that we are not going to replace.
Okay. But with respect to the 396 meters, well, those 396 AMI meters that are for load research, are those only residential, or are they kind of a mixture of residential and commercial?
I don't know that.
Okay. So you're not sure if the entire 396 meters will not be retired, or some of those meters will be retired?
I would have to talk to the operations folks. So if they are still going to be used and useful, they will not be retired.
Okay. So for those meters that will not be retired, the 396 meters that will not be retired, those will not be, the cost of those meters will not become a part of the undepreciated net book value meters for which Duke Kentucky is seeking authority to record as a regulatory asset.
That is correct.
Okay. And then on your rebuttal testimony, this was one of the questions that was asked of Mr. Schneider. On page 13, line 16 through 18 of your of Mr. Schneider's rebuttal testimony.
Oh, Mr. Schneider, okay.
Yes.
Page 13.
Yes. This was one of the questions where I believe was deferred to you.
Page 13, line,
16 through 18.
okay. Yes.
So it's regarding the regulatory asset. Once it's authorized, stated that the company will know what that value will be.
Correct.
Once or if it's authorized by the commission and the CPCN request is approved by the commission.
Correct.
So Given that depreciation will continue to be taken on the current meters until each of those meters will be replaced, can you explain how the reg asset value will be known prior to the meter upgrade being fully completed?
So there are accounting rules around impairment of assets, which is what we were talking about asking for this reg asset on. It's my understanding of those accounting rules that once a group of assets is declared to be impaired, that no further depreciation will be booked on those assets.
Okay. So that will occur only upon commission approval of the reg asset authority to defer those costs and the approval of the CPCN?
Yes, so upon commission approval, and there's also one last, I think, internal approval that has to be made.
Okay. With respect to the gas modules, the useful life or the depreciation rate of the gas modules in Ohio, I think this question was deferred to you as well. Do you know what that depreciation rate is?
Yes, so the life in Ohio for the gas modules is 15 years.
Okay.
And that was initially determined in a settlement with the Ohio AMI case, and it was confirmed, we had a rate case in Ohio back in calendar year 2012, and our depreciation consultant at that time, John Spanis, confirmed that rate.
Okay.
For both the gas module and actually the new electric AMI meters also.
Okay. Can you give me 1 second?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so, Ms. Love, could you refer to the attachment to your settlement testimony?
I have it.
Okay, on page 1 of 2, could you, in the form of a post-hearing data request, provide the cost support for the numbers on this schedule?
Yes, we can.
Also, can you confirm that the costs shown on this page are for combination electric and gas customers?
Yes.
Okay. Can you provide the schedule for electric-only customers?
Yes, we can provide.
So on this page, it shows that the actual one-time cost for a combination customer to opt out to be $167.60. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And can you explain the rationale for the provision and the stipulation of only including a one-time cost of $100 for the opt-out?
Yeah, so that was reached as a result of the, I'll say, the fraud stipulation. So there was a little give and take on all the items, and I think that was a compromise. And it was close to the cost that we charge in Duke Energy, Ohio.
And then if you can turn to page 2 of that attachment, there's an estimated number of 143 customers who could elect to opt out.
Yes.
Can you explain how that number was arrived at?
Yes, so we have approximately 143,000 electric customers in Kentucky, and based on Don Schneider's testimony earlier, in the other jurisdictions, we've experienced about a 0.1% opt-out.
Okay.
So if you take the 143,000 times the 0.1%.
And then also on the same page, can you tell us why the labor rate shown for the 2-meter reading categories differ?
We could answer that when we give you the specifics for the other numbers. I believe it might be a different classification of meter reader, but we can confirm that in the post-hearing data
Okay.
request.
Okay, and I'll refer you to the stipulation and recommendation on page 4, paragraph 4A.
I have it.
Okay. States that the third adjustment that Duke, Kentucky will propose in its next base electric rate case is identified as an adjustment to reflect non-fuel related portion of the benefit type, increased revenues reflected in confidential exhibit DLS-4. So the increased revenue amount from DLS-4 on page 1, which is a non-confidential amount, shows as $42,082,116. Is that correct?
Yes, subject to
On
check.
page 1 of DLS-4?
Don Schneider's attachment?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Page one, I'm sorry, what were you, the 42 million,
yes, that-
082,116?
Yes, for the
Yes.
increased revenue as part of the benefits?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us what the amount of the non-fuel related portion of those benefits that is referred to in the stipulation?
So to quantify that number?
Yes.
So we would have to do a study, but I would say approximately, usually 50%, I would say the customer's electric bill is fuel-related. So we could do an analysis on that, but just ballpark, I would think it would be around 50%.
Okay. So roughly about $21 million will then be proposed in Duke Kentucky's next base rate case as an adjustment?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. If you look down on the same page of the stipulation and recommendation, it says that the fifth adjustment listed is a pro forma adjustment to account for the projected ongoing operational savings as reflected in confidential exhibit DLS-4. adjusted to factor in any operational savings degradation that may accrue due to the establishment of an electric AMI opt-out tariff. Can you tell us some detail about how this pro forma adjustment would be calculated? For example, if Duke Kentucky filed an electric base rate application using 2019 as a test year, what categories from Exhibit DLS4 would be included, and how would the pro forma adjustment be calculated?
Okay, so the categories, I believe, are spelled out.
Well,
So if you,
yeah, it may touch upon some confidential items, so
are the categories confidential,
The categories,
or is it just the amount?
I believe just the numbers, let me verify that. The categories themselves are not confidential.
So it's okay to comment on
So
categories?
you can speak as long as you don't get into the numbers per years,
Okay,
you're fine.
okay. So the benefits are, I can spell them out. So they are I'm sorry. I think the benefits, because you were referring me to page 2, right, but I think the benefits are on page,
we're looking at the one on page 8 of 13.
so where it says benefit type,
Yes,
so we pick up the categories and the expense reduction.
right.
The avoided cost O&M category with the exception of stipulation. I believe it's sorry, I'm looking for Oh, I'm sorry, it's in the footnote. So the avoided costs O&M, the categories of the avoided restoration costs, the avoided restoration cost major storms, the associated with the maintenance of TWACs, associated with the operation of TWACs, and miscellaneous O&M. So basically, everything in that category except for the upgrading and integrating TWACs.
Okay.
And then the non-fuel piece of the increased revenue.
You want to ask how that would be calculated? Okay, so do you know how that amount would be calculated using 2019 as the test year?
So without using the numbers in the case, I'll use an example
Sure.
of, let's say the savings started in 2017 and it was $1 million, and then it went to 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. If we filed a case using 2019 as a test period, we would have 3 million in savings. So we are going to present value the 4 million and 5 million for future years and kind of bring them forward to that rate case period.
Okay.
Does that make sense? We're going to levelize those future savings in our next base rate case.
Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. As a post-hearing data request, could you provide us utilizing the calculation utilizing the actual numbers for the savings in the exhibit?
Yes. What do you want us to assume is a test year for our next rate case?
2019.
Okay.
Thank you. And then at the top of page 4,
Are you back to the settlement?
yes, sorry. It states that Duke Energy Kentucky, it's the first full sentence at the top of page 4. It states that Duke Energy Kentucky shall bear the burden of proof for prudency of the recovery of any such overruns. And overruns
Sorry, you're
were
at the top of page.
4 of the stipulation.
Yes. Okay, I have it.
Okay. So the cost overruns are referring to the overall cost of the project itself. So is the word prudency as used in this sentence synonymous with reasonableness? Do you know?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, if they're prudently incurred, trying to think of the definition we typically use in a rate case. So I would say reasonable.
Would be reasonable.
Could be an interpretation of that word.
Okay. Well, do you want to confirm that as part of the post-hearing data request response? Would that be better? Well, let me ask you.
Yes,
could
I guess
you provide,
I'm trying to use an example or whatever. I guess to me, it's the typical burden of proof that the company has in a rate case, right? For any costs, we have to prove that those costs were prudently incurred.
Okay.
So I guess I'm not sure your definition of reasonable.
Well, I kind of want to know what Duke Kentucky's definition of reasonable is. So
My definition of prudent is we paid a fair price, for meters. I'm trying to expound upon it.
And let me make it a little bit more
If
simpler.
you could give me a specific example, maybe that might help.
I'll just request this as part of a post-hearing data request in order for the company to have some time to reflect upon it.
Okay.
So is the word prudency as used in this statement synonymous with reasonableness?
Okay.
So, excuse me, could you refer to page 7 of the stipulation at the bottom of the page?
I have it.
It says that any costs that are not fully recovered by the opt-out program tariff for providing the ongoing opt-out program shall be eligible for recovery in Duke Energy Kentucky's, on the next page, base rates. When it's referred to as saying ongoing opt-out costs, does that mean the initial fee, the monthly fee, or both?
Both.
Okay. Does Duke Kentucky plan to establish a regulatory asset for these costs?
Regulatory asset for the opt-out? No.
So, So for clarification, Duke Kentucky will then be just recovering in its next base rate case those costs that are reflected in the test year of that rate case.
Right, so using the scenario of our calendar year 2019 rate
Right.
case, we would, in our case, we would include all of our costs, and then there would be, I'll say, a credit for the costs that we are recovering from customers through the opt-out tariff.
Okay. On page 8 of the stipulation, at the middle of the page, with respect to the opt-out program and the implementation of that program, it states that the incremental non-recurring costs for the information technology required to enable the opt-out program is at a cost of $140,000, and Duke Kentucky is requesting a deferral of this amount. So to clarify, the parties are requesting that Duke Kentucky be allowed to establish 2 regulatory assets related to the metering upgrade, one for the undepreciated costs of the meters that are going to be retired, and second, the information technology costs, the incremental costs needed to implement the opt-out program. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Can Duke Kentucky provide a breakdown showing the components of that $140,000?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Could you do that as a post-hearing data request?
Yes.
Okay. In other jurisdictions, in other Duke Energy jurisdiction, do you know how much the incremental non-recurring costs to implement those opt-out programs were?
The IT costs?
Yes.
So Ohio is the only other jurisdiction that I
Has an
deal with,
opt-out?
so I'm only aware of that one.
Okay.
I believe Mr. Schneider testified that South Carolina also has an opt-out.
Right.
I'm just not familiar with the cost in that jurisdiction. In Ohio, we did get a regulatory asset for a similar IT cost in our opt-out, and we may have to give that to you in a post-hearing data request, but I'm thinking it was around $250,000.
Okay. And that's just because of the scale of operations in Ohio is much larger than relatively here in Kentucky?
I don't know if it's the scale. I think Kentucky's probably a little bit less because some of the work was done for Ohio and they have a common customer system.
Okay. Okay. So yes, could you provide that as a post-hearing data request, the
Yes.
costs for Ohio, and then the costs for the other states that Duke Energy operates in that have an opt-out program?
Yes.
Okay. Can you refer to page 13 and 14 of the stipulations, paragraph 9?
I have it.
Okay. Paragraph states that in Duke Kentucky's next base rate proceeding, the company will propose a revision to its charges to reflect the actual costs and the availability of remote reconnection and disconnection. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. In the meantime, before Duke Kentucky's next base rate case, what will customers with AMI meters be charged who are disconnected or reconnected remotely?
So currently, I believe Kentucky does not have a disconnection charge. It's
Duke
just
Kentucky
a
does not have a disconnection charge?
They just have a reconnection charge.
Okay. So for the reconnection charge, what would
So
that?
until we have another tariff approved in in our rate case proceeding, they will be charged the current rate.
Can you refer now to page 18 of the stipulation? There's not a day in the top paragraph. There's not a day.
Yes, I believe that was signed on Wednesday.
2 days ago.
Monday?
Okay,
Was it signed on Monday?
Tuesday. I believe.
Tuesday, the 6th.
could there be a supplemental filing with the day?
We will do that, yes.
Okay. And then, could you refer to the opt-out tariff that's attached to the stipulation?
I have that.
There's an proposed effective date of August 1, 2017. If the commission approves the metering upgrade, should the effective date be the date on which the metering upgrade is approved, in case the actual deployment is earlier than August 1, 2017?
Or we have to have, in order to bill customers for this new tariff, we have to have the IT changes in place first. So it's highly likely that the first set of customers will not get charged for the first couple of months until we have these IT systems
Okay.
in place. But we wanted to have the tariff in place so that one of the benefits in the stipulation of having the tariff in place is customers can opt out before the meter is installed and save the $100 charge.
Okay. Your Honor, I just have a couple of questions that touch upon confidential material. Should I wait until at the very end, until all of the questions on cross for that's on the public record be done?
If you'd prefer, that would be fine.
Okay.
We'll go ahead and, if you've completed your cross-examination with the exception of what needs to be taken up in confidential session?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
Commissioner Cicero?
I just have a curiosity question regarding the Piedmont acquisition and all their 1 million gas customers. Is the intent of Duke to utilize these new meters throughout that system?
I don't know. We could find that out.
Your Honor, Dr. Weintraub, who's here today, has that information, and so if you would like to ask him that question, we'd be happy to put him back on the stand.
Okay. I don't have
Anything further? Commissioner Lawson? Anyone else? No questions. Do you have any other witnesses other than recalling perhaps Dr. Weintraub?
No, I do have a couple of redirect on the public.
Proceed.
Thank you.
I think that staff have confidence.
Oh, yeah, well, we're going to finish,
Okay.
I guess, this, and then we'll get into it.
Ms. Lobb, do you recall some questions from staff regarding the remaining life of those metering assets that you described as being depreciated in that single account?
Yes.
Do you recall whether or not Duke Energy Kentucky has recently filed a depreciation study with the Commission?
Yes, we filed one, I believe it was back in 2011. It's part of our stipulation in our 2006 case. We agreed to update our depreciation study. So it was filed, the rates were not implemented, but we did file a
Would
study.
you agree with me, subject to check, that it was in 2013?
Yes.
Thank you. And do you know whether in that depreciation study it would have listed at that point the composite remaining life of those assets?
It would have for the electric, yes.
Thank you. And we had filed that as part of the post-case correspondence in our 2006 electric rate case, case number 2006-172, right?
Yes, I'll trust you on the case number.
Thank you. Ms. Lobb, do you recall some discussion about the adjustment that will be made in our next rate case relating to the non-fuel portion of the increased revenues?
Yes.
That adjustment, that will be part of the test period adjustments that we will be making, correct?
Yes, in our next rate case. Yes.
And so, am I correct that that would be essentially an offset to what our revenue requirement would otherwise have been?
Yes.
And could you explain, how that adjustment exactly would be made? For example, whether it would be some annualized amount of the savings that's projected over the 17 years of the study.
So, like,
Let me try to rephrase.
yeah, so I'm trying to,
So just how will that adjust, what would that adjustment look like for the
So-
non-fuel portion?
so for the non-fuel portion in a rate case, you come up, you compare the revenue that you need to your existing revenues. So these adjustments will cause your existing revenues to increase. And we will levelize that similar to the example I gave on savings. So we will adjust I'll say the current revenue number in our filing, it will get adjusted up so that the revenue deficiency will decrease.
Which would in turn mean that the overall revenue requirement would be lower,
Will be
right?
lower, yes.
And so with respect to that non-fuel portion of the increased revenue calculation, that would be some annualized number, because the total, for example, is, what's the total of the 17 years of deployment, if you back that all back down to a total
Yes,
number.
okay, so I see your question. Yeah, so the 40, I believe it's the 46 million that staff references in Mr. Schneider's attachment is a total over I believe it's a 17-year time frame. So yes, it would be an annualized equivalent of that 47 million.
And then that would be baked into our base rates, which would then persist on.
Yeah, so you would get, and just doing simple math, say it was 17 million over 17 years, our rate case would show a $1 million increase to revenues to offset that.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any questions?
Yes. And Rocco, let me ask you this first before I ask, to see if we need to go into confidential session or not. Attachment or Exhibit DLS 4, page 10 of 13.
Commissioner, is it okay if we take a 1-minute break to do this off the record? Is that acceptable?
That's fine with me.
We're off the record for 60 seconds. All right, we're back on the public record. You may continue with your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Lobb, could you refer to page 6 and 7 of your settlement testimony? And beginning in line 23 on page 6.
Yes, I have it.
Okay. You discussed the gas tracking mechanism that's proposed by Duke, Kentucky, and you state that to allow Duke, Kentucky to recover costs of the gas metering upgrade and to offset these costs by crediting customers with the anticipated benefits as set forth in the expense reduction and certain avoided cost O&M benefit types set forth in DLS-4.
Yes.
Okay. Can you identify for us the categories from Exhibit DLS-4 on page 10 that would be included in this tracking mechanism?
So it would be the same ones as I just mentioned for the electric.
Okay. So that excludes the benefits associated with a TWAX upgrade and what was the other?
And that was, yeah, we didn't include the avoided cost, capital, and customer savings, but if you,
Upgrading, integrating TWAX?
yes,
Right, okay. And then not including the avoided cost capital and the customer savings?
correct.
Okay. Is there anything else? Those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Cicero, do you have anything further?
Just a general comment. The stipulation was very ambiguous on what was included in some of these generalities that are mentioned, which is why I believe staff is asking some of the questions they're asking. So before any stipulation could be finalized, we'd have to have a more specifics identifying categories of what's included in some of these.
So so there is a footnote, and that's what I was trying to find when I was going on page,
Yeah, there is a footnote on page 4 of the
that details
stipulation.
out the categories.
We'll make sure when we go through it that everybody's clear on what's included.
Okay, Your Honor, that was probably more attempted, more art than science, as we were working diligently to get the stipulation put together. Trying to put it all in the body became very cumbersome and confusing. So in our attempt to try to make it clearer and easier to read, we probably made it slightly more confusing, and we apologize for that.
Understood. We just want to make sure that when all is said and done, everybody understands what everybody is going to do.
Certainly.
No. Commissioner Cicero? At this time, we'll go back into confidential session so that staff may complete cross-examination unless you have something else.
I think opposing counsel has
Yeah.
one more redirect.
One more question, if I could, Your Honor. Thank you. Ms. Lobb, we had talked about a little bit ago about the non-fuel portion of those increased revenues. Do you know how the fuel portion will be shared with customers?
Yes, we have a separate fuel tracker, a fuel adjustment clause, that those will come through. The customer will see the benefits through that tracker.
And that will just be in the ordinary course
In
of
the
business?
ordinary course of business.
Okay,
And
thank you.
that's filed on a monthly basis.
Thank you.
Anything further?
My apologies. Nothing further, Your Honor. My apologies. The clarification of the one question that I thought that would need confidential session is not now needed.
Are there any more questions of this witness by anyone? If not, you may be excused. Step down. Do you have any other witnesses? I know we're going to call, Dr. Weintraub, correct? Anyone other than that?
No, Your Honor.
Would you ask him to please
Certainly.
retake the stand?
For its next witness, Duke Energy would call Dr. Weintraub.
Did you have the question?
I did not, Your Honor.
Someone.
I think-
Okay, all right. Commissioner Cicero had the question.
Dr. Weintraub, with regard to the Piedmont acquisition, which added about 1 million customers to Duke's system, 1 million gas customers. Are the gas meters that are going to be utilized in Kentucky and that are currently being utilized in Ohio intended to be utilized on that system as well?
Yeah, and what I know is, I'll speak specifically to the North Carolina portion of PMAN's operations I'm familiar with. They also have operations in Tennessee and South Carolina, but that certainly is the minority of their operations. They currently have AMR meters, and they were not planning on replacing them anytime soon. But now with the merger, there will be a body of work to understand the benefits of having co-electric and gas meters and infrastructure as we're rolling out in the Carolinas. Does that change their current plan? So that body of work will be underway, but there's no immediate decision to do anything different than what they're doing today.
Obviously, it was just a clarification for my benefit.
Yes, sir.
We have no jurisdiction in them.
Yes, sir.
Just a curiosity. Thank you.
Mr. Logston?
Nothing further.
Nothing else?
One question.
Sure.
For our benefit, can you, I believe in your testimony, you explained the usage alert program that Duke is creating. Can you provide a little bit of an overview of the customer benefits that Duke expects?
Yeah, absolutely. So the usage alerts are very similar to what you have as a data plan on your cell phone. So when you're coming up to your data plan limit and you get an alert saying you're within 75% of your data limit, 90% and so on, it's going to be a very similar program where we'll be using either a set threshold that the customer says, I want to spend $100 a month, or we're working on a default setting last month's or say last year's December bill, just because of weather fluctuations. We're still working through that. But then what will end up happening is the customer will receive an alert saying you're within 75% of your budget or last month or last year's spend, just to provide that type of upcoming alert status and to allow them to take actions if required. We provide various energy efficiency tips and tools and so on, and so to make the customer aware of they're approaching a threshold or a budget, and there's tips available to them. That's very different compared to what happens today, where a customer receives a bill in arrears, and they might open it and say, wow, I didn't know I spent that much. So that's the difference that these high bill usage alerts will be creating for the customer.
Is that all?
Yeah, and can you confirm that in the stipulation, the company committed to making those available to Duke Energy Kentucky customers, I think, quote, as soon as practical following completion of deployment?
Correct. We are developing these today, and it's very likely that when the first meters actually do roll out and get certified and the communications network is up and running, that those will be available. So our goal is that these products, these basic services, as we're calling them, enhanced basic services, will be available when the meter actually gets put on a customer's home and is certified, such that they then can take advantage of these products and services. And our goal is to really change the customer experience with that meter enhancement. So that should be available. Our timing is such that it should be available really on day one of the meter installations. Some of in my testimony, I mentioned that some, for example, the prepaid advantage, the prepaid program, will most likely have to come back in front of this commission to talk through some of those issues. But for some of these services which are providing a convenience and additional control to the customer, they'll be available on day one is our timing.
That's all the questions we have.
Any questions?
Just one quick question, Your Honor. As a follow-up to the alert program, is Duke Energy aware of any other utilities that utilize that particular program as an offering to customers?
Yes, that's becoming more and more available as utilities are working to improve the customer experience and really match what customers are seeing with other interactions with other companies, i.e. their cell phone carriers. So this is a program that's starting to become more and more developed and offered to customers, especially with smart meters continuing to roll out.
So this is more of a recent offering that's made available from other utilities?
Yes, I can say that when we go and talk at conferences and so on, that we are usually in front of other companies that are looking to do this as well. I do know that some of the California utilities that might be farther along do have some of these alerts and so on up and coming, but it's relatively new, but I would say there are others who are doing that.
So the type of savings that are being realized by the companies that have used this in a more, I guess, further along in their offering, are they seeing, what types of benefits are seen by those utilities that are offering that?
Sure. Many of these benefits are not necessarily monetarily, which is why they're not necessarily part of a cost-benefit analysis. They're really around the customer experience and creating satisfaction for the customer and creating a better feeling that the customer might have with the utility. So the benefits are more around the customer experience, the customer sentiment, customer satisfaction, not necessarily monetarily, although there could be. We don't necessarily know, and we don't include them in any analysis.
And so those customer experience benefits, those are metrics that could be measured, correct?
Correct. So we know, and I believe there's an attachment in one of the data requests that provides under confidentiality the J.D. Power survey. And we know that usage alerts is one of the highest satisfaction tool you can provide for a customer in one of the categories of J.D. Power. So as those studies are available, you have utilities working to provide those tools and those experiences for customers that customers enjoy and find satisfying.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Commissioner Cicero, any questions?
Can you confirm that the thresholds you referred to in the program are both dollar-based and volumetric?
We would prefer, and our customers would prefer, the goal would be to have it dollars. So in other words, volumetric. Many customers don't even really understand a KWH. We'd like to confirm you're spending your budget is $100 and you're approaching that threshold. So because of the AMI infrastructure, we can now pull our customers' usage on a daily basis and do that calculation such that as they're approaching that threshold, whether it's on day 15, day 20, day 25, we can do it on a dollar basis is our goal. That's the basis by which customers get their bill and understand, not necessarily KWH.
But you realize what I'm referring back here on the gas side.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On electric, it doesn't matter. Volumetric, it doesn't matter. Because of adjustments in purchase price of energy, that price per unit will fluctuate up and down, and someone approaching a dollar budget amount may be using the same quantity as they did the prior year or the prior period or whatever it's being measured against, but has a different dollar amount.
Correct, and I apologize. Most of what I'm talking to is on the electric side. The benefit
for electric, that's okay.
Yeah, but, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you when what you just said.
Even on electric, it's okay for you to explain. It would be the same situation where you have energy cost adjustments that go in there and change the unit rate. So if it's just based on dollars, then you could have them approaching a dollar threshold but not be consuming the same amount of energy.
Correct. And so from a customer viewpoint, the dollar's the dollar. Certainly the makeup, whether it's a fuel, certainly we know the fuel, the rate that our customers charge changes over time. We do try to explain on the bill separately why their bill's changing. How much is because of weather? How much is because of changes to the rate? Sometimes even just how many days are in a billing cycle versus another time. But from a dollar standpoint, that's how customers kind of relate to their bill. So certainly the goal would be to have it all be dollar-based with certainly additional explanations as to what could be changing that. But if someone had $100 last month and their budget is $100 this month, we certainly would want to explain to them that these are the changes that are occurring, including the fact that the rate might have gone up and their usage might be the same.
It would be probably useful to have the threshold be both, but
Yeah, and this is certainly something that we can, it wouldn't be hard to do both. It wouldn't be hard to toggle even, which is something that we're working to
provide the
develop.
option.
Because you have the information, you have the KWH, you're having a rate. Do you want to toggle in KWH? Some of the additional, we had a pilot this summer where you were actually seeing your usage in real time. So you actually were seeing, I can literally turn on and off in my house lights in a room, and you can actually see the needle spike in real time. And we're working to develop that. That was a smart meter usage app. And it was in KWH. And in that case, there was a lot of discussion around when you're trying to understand. In my example, I realized I saw incandescent lights in a room that my daughter was leaving on, and if she changed them to LED, I saw a big drop off. In that case, I wanted to see the KWH versus dollars. So this is part of the art and science of making sure we give tools and information to customers so they can then feel like they're in control, understand that they have choices, and again, be very transparent about it. So we will most likely try to have the ability to toggle it back and forth, KWH versus dollars, and we'll see which one customers prefer.
I think you would engage a more sophisticated customer if you provided the option to look
Yeah.
at.
I agree.
Anything further? Commissioner Logston? Mr. DeCenzo?
Nothing further.
Any other questions of this witness? And you may step down.
Thank you.
So I understand that Duke has no further witnesses, is that correct?
Correct.
Does the Office of the Attorney General have any witnesses?
No, sir.
As I understand it, pursuant to the stipulation and recommendation, Duke and his counsel have agreed to waive the cross-examination of the witness who had previously provided written testimony in the record. Is that correct?
Correct.
At this time, if there are no other witnesses, do counsel have any motions to bring before the commission? If not, Mr. DeCenzo, would you ask Mr. Henning to step forward so we could take the oath relative to the settlement? You may stand. Thank you. To you, James Henning, as President of Duke Energy of Kentucky, Inc., swear or affirm that the representations you're about to give are true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Were you aware of, and did you have an opportunity to participate in all of the negotiations that resulted in the settlement agreement?
I did.
Did you voluntarily sign or authorize the execution of the settlement agreement, and do you fully support each and every provision contained therein?
I do.
Are there any provisions in the settlement agreement that you do not understand, object to, or take issue with?
No, they're not.
Was any consideration of any kind offered, or were any promises made other than what is expressly set forth in the settlement agreement to induce you, or Duke Energy, to negotiate and sign the settlement agreement?
No.
Are you aware of any reason why the Commission should not adopt and approve the settlement agreement in its entirety?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Thank you, sir. You may be seated. There were, I guess, I have 14 and perhaps more post-hearing data requests, and what I would propose is to permit staff, which I know has a backlog of things to do early next week, perhaps give them until Tuesday of next week at 5 o'clock, that would be December 13th, to submit to you, Mr. DeCenzo, the post-hearing data requests in writing, and then permit you to have until the end of the day, December 22nd, 23rd, or if you'd like additional time, I would be very receptive to that.
So let me look at a calendar here. Certainly the December 13th date would be fine. if that's sufficient for staff.
We're going into holiday season, and I know you or
Certainly.
your Duke employees may be off for the holidays, so
So that goes back to- Certainly, we would endeavor to have this done by then. Some of the data requests will require analysis, so that they may require additional time. We will endeavor to get those completed by December 22nd, and if
why don't we go to,
Something-
what if we just said December 30th?
December 30th,
Would
that's
that be fine?
That's
It's
great.
just by the end of the day, December 30th.
Yes.
All right, so staff's post-hearing data request will be due by 5 p.m. on next Tuesday, December 13th, and Duke will have until the end of the day, 5 p.m. On Friday, December 30th, to file responses. And if somehow that you have a problem, if you'll file something in advance and let us know, we'll
Certainly.
take a look at
We
it.
will actually endeavor to file them sooner, but we thank you for the additional time.
If there are no other matters to be brought before the commission, we will now adjourn the hearing. Thank you.
Your Honor.
We stand adjourned.